welcome to the Services and Drinks Berlin. We're very happy to have you here tonight. Does everyone have a drink? Let's make sure. I have my water bottle with me. Okay, so if everyone has his or her drink, we can start, I would say. Welcome. So what is the Services and Drinks all about? I mean, we've seen some familiar names and faces already today, but for all of you who are joining for the first time, we started this as a community, as a network in Berlin. And then when the pandemic hit, we went online, and this meant that we were able to include even more people from all around the world. And as you can see, it's actually working. So this is all about inclusion, meeting people, helping each other, sharing and learning, and really connecting on all design topics that you can imagine. So so this is us. This is what we like to do, and we're doing this now for Matti 5 years or so. So
yeah, we've been doing the drinks for a little bit over two years, but
yeah, that's true.
5 years before that we started organizing the service jams. So we've been a team for 7+ years now.
For 7+ years, crazy. We like to call each other the nice people, by the way, but this is just a side note. So this is us. It's Matti and myself, Mela, and usually Adam and Dee are also with us, but both of them are down under, like they are in Australia, and they somehow didn't. It was like difficult to them to match the time schedule, so they're not with us today. But you might know them from the other drinks. Usually Dee or Adam host these drinks. Yeah. So this is us, and what is happening tonight? So we have Heku with us. Welcome. We know each other from a project actually that we did at Eden Spiekermann last year. So this is why this is how we met. And you will talk about creating meaningful change through design research. And yeah, we're very much looking forward to this.
Welcome, Heku.
Welcome. Yes. And with this, I would say. Let's start. I will stop sharing my screen because now it's more about having a conversation, talking to each other, and yeah. Then let us start like nice and easy. And yeah, please tell us a bit about yourself, like for those who don't know you or don't know what you're doing. What is actually what you do?
Okay, I am now based in London. But I work across London and Amsterdam, where I have a studio. It's called Standby, with a small team, 10 people. And what we do, we describe as design research for meaningful change, actually. And design research, I'm pretty sure you're familiar what that is. And as Standby, we've been practicing that more than 15 years already. And even myself, I'm older than 15. I've been dabbling in that field of work for more time, even when it wasn't called design research. So when I started out, I have a background in social sciences and working in the internet sector. It was called usability research first, then became user research, UX. Then we all broadened that to service design. And we see design research really as a specialty within the field of service design. And I think you could safely say that Standby is like a pioneer in that field. So we're pioneering with both methods and process. We work on projects, but we have published quite some toolkits as well. But also we're pioneering on why are we doing this? Not just how are we doing it or what are we doing, but also why. And that's where the meaningful change comes in. It's very close to our hearts. And we see it as tightly connected with process and tools, purpose, you could say.
Yeah, nice. So we will hear about that later on, like talk about a bit more in detail. But also we would like to know something about you as a person. So what is your best holiday destination actually? Like we have some nice questions here.
Well, real faraway holidays I haven't of course done for a long time, as everybody probably. But at the moment I love going to the German Schwarzwald.
Oh, okay.
It's possible with the train from Amsterdam, not too far. It's really soothing to walk in a beautiful forest. So that's my favorite destination at the moment. I've done a few trips and I have some planned as well.
Oh, that's nice. I never heard that actually, that it's like the signature holiday destination.
It is for me now.
Really cool.
I call
was
it
your
forest
first job?
bathing, just
Forest,
walking.
yeah. I heard this is like a very, very good thing to do, right? Very healthy, very healing, as you just said.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
What was your first job then?
Ooh, my first paid job. I was a projectionist in the Amsterdam Film Museum. You know, big rolls of film, the old days.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the proper film, not digital.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, I had to start that in time, change the roles.
You
So
had
I've
to
seen
change
lots
the
of
role.
classics. Yeah, I know a lot about film history.
Well, that's a nice way of getting educated.
It was my student job next to my
your student
studies.
job. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What are your most interesting design clients or projects you consulted so far?
Ooh, out of everything?
Well, you have, out of everything. It's probably pretty hard, right?
Difficult. Well, at the moment in my heart is very recently, last week, our first in-person workshop again after all these years. This was in London, a community project about improving bike parking in London. And in Amsterdam, we have done quite some of those projects on bike parking and public space. And here we had a community together to talk about how could things be improved in London. And it was just so nice to have a big map on the table, have everywhere around the table, and to model the environment. So that's at the moment, that's what gets a smile on my face. Yeah.
Yeah, we also had that recently, like the first in-person workshop, and it's amazing. Like, I mean, we all know that it's like completely different and super nice, but if you experience it, it's really, I don't know, I was exhausted and super happy at the end of the day, just because of being with people in one room.
Making
that's
things.
really cool. Yes,
make the props for the conversation starters.
Yeah.
Of course, we've done lots of that, but we've all done it digitally last year. So you made your Miro boards, and it's also very enjoyable. But getting back into the drawers to get all the tangible stuff out was fun.
Yeah, totally. And you just mentioned this is close to your heart right now, or like it brings a smile to your face, and you already talked a bit on what's close to your heart with the design research. So let's switch gears again and then and talk a bit about more about that. So what does design research then actually really mean to you, just to get an understanding of that?
It's a means to an end, I would say. It's not, of course, I'm specialist in it. So for me, it's what I do every day. But
yeah, sure.
I do it for something. So I do it to contribute to improvements, make some things a bit more human, more fair, more quality of life. So design research is how I can contribute to that, together with other people, because as a specialist, we never work on a project on our own. We always work with other specialists.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a means, not a goal.
And if you say you do it to make things more human, more fair, is it like because it's so human-centered, the whole process or the whole method, or where does this come from?
Yeah, I think it is fair to say that the methodology for a couple of decades have been built on how can we make design processes more human-centered, although at the moment, of course, even human-centered, we should criticize a bit, because as humans, we're killing the planet as well. Just do what humans want. So at the moment, not just us, but many people are experimenting and to think, but should we talk about life-centered maybe rather than human-centered or user-centered? But I think the principles, of course, you can endlessly debate about words, but the principles are to make things better for the positive, to make sure that it's about quality of life. The principles are the same, I think, even though the methods and the terminology changes over the years. And that really comes deep from a design discipline. Human-centered design is coming from a design discipline and has evolved into a specialism on its own as a research specialism, but it still stands on the shoulders of design.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, if we're talking about research, is it like, just to be very specific, what kind of research do you mean? Is it always talking to people, or like how do you get your where do you get your research from? Because
the type of data.
Yeah, the type of data, and also like, I mean, design research, it could be like doing research on design or designing the research, or, you know, like, I think it could be a misleading term as well. You know?
I see what you mean. Yeah, that's true. If you go into the books of design research, there's also areas where you're researching how designers work. So that's more like research into design, or you're researching certain materials, which is more research for design. But our area of research is research through design. So we are researchers in a design process. So the research is always part of a larger exploratory and creation process to develop something or to change something. So the research is not outside of the design, although sometimes in the roles in the project, it's allocated to us as researchers, but I would say we are part of the design team.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. It's also, of course, like the synthesis, everything that you take out of the interviews and out of the research, it's also part of the design process, right? You're giving kind of input into the design process that is really crucial for being life-centered, human-centered, whatever you might call it, right?
Yeah. Otherwise, it would be academic research. Of course, you can do research for research's sake, which is also important in the world. But what drives me and my team and my fellow design researchers is you want to do research to then bring that to inform and inspire the other specialists you work with, or the next stage in a project to help creating something.
Yeah, like guardrails or setting the stage for everything that's coming afterwards,
helping
right?
to scope things, not to forget something, to better understand something, to ask the right critical questions. Are we considering everything that we need to consider? And in that sense, coming back to a previous question you asked about what's part of that research, yes, in most cases, it does entail in some point to talk with people. Because that's the richest data you can find. But that's not all of it. It's also about reading, observing, trying things out, make something, and then show it to people and try it out. But in all these activities, interviews or group sessions, it's always, we talk a lot about blended research or hybrid research, where you combine several methodologies in one project, because then you can get data from different perspectives, and that will make your data set richer. And I think always conversations are one of the methods in that blended mix, whereas observations or making a prototype and testing it, or doing some modeling, that's not always in there. But so there's a lot of things you can pick from to make the mix that you need for your project, but conversations are in there at some point always. And it might be synchronous conversations, like an interview or a workshop. It might also be asynchronous conversations where you ask people to keep a diary, for instance. A probe study, you will send questions and people answer. So you might be in a conversation for a period of a week with a group of people about the topic, but it's not actually like we are sitting now.
Yeah, sure. And that's really also like a really fun part, right?
This I love that.
Being in a conversation with the people,
And to scope that conversation. So for the project, to think for this topic and this group of people that we want to involve, what would be the best combination of methods to have that conversation? Because sometimes it's a topic that might be quite complex. You can't just sit and have an interview and then people, you put people on the spot. So they may need a couple of days to walk around with it and to almost observe themselves in their daily lives and to think, what do I think of this? Or what are my experiences with it? And you need to give your participants the opportunity to warm up to the topic.
To guide them a bit, We have one question from the audience. Maybe it's actually really fitting into what you just said. It's in your opinion, what is the trickiest part of design research?
The trickiest? Well, there's a few classics. And that is the qualitative discussion always, because in principle, most of the design research is deep dive. So that means you go deep with a smaller group of people, and it's mostly qualitative research, although it's not completely true. Often you can make a mix, but the heart of it is qualitative. And people are familiar with that type of research. Understand where the validity and reliability of that is, but people who are not, so people who are maybe used to marketing research, will always ask the same questions. So as a design researcher, you always need to be prepared. Even if you've done stellar work, you're going to present it in a client organization. There will always be a few stakeholders, and it's not that they're evil, it's just that they don't know those basics. So you have to prepare that and even for yourself, it might be like, oh, there we go again. You just have to explain that.
Yeah,
so
that's
it's
true.
Tricky in itself. It doesn't hamper our projects, but we know that if you want the results to be used and to be accepted and embraced, you need to make sure that people, accept it.
You need the buy-in. Yeah, you need the buy-in from the other side, right? Yeah, that's true.
So that's a recurring thing you need to pay attention to.
Yeah, I heard that too a lot, actually. So now we talk a lot about design research. Let's talk about the creating impact part, actually, of what we wanted to talk. So what does meaningful change or creating impact actually mean to you?
Now you touch something.
The easy questions for
you touch a nerve, because in our, let's say, circle of friends and peers who work in this field, we've had a lot of conversations about meaningful change, about what drives us. Of course, we care about methods and process, but really, why do we do this work, and what is the contribution of it? And we find that something like meaningful change is terminology that really sits well with the often quite complex and large topics we work on, which are big transformations and contribute to the system change. But it's not as easy as let's do a project, let's ask questions, let's have a result, and let's have impact. So we are more and more coming to the conclusion that maybe we should stop torturing ourselves in our discipline with these words like impact and results, because our work often is not going straight to a result. It's creating something that contributes to a change, but the change is slow, and that change involves other people than just us. So it's a moving target. It's very fluid, and we feel, after having lots of conversations with people about this, so sorry for being so passionate, but we care about it. We feel that it might, for our work as designers and research creatives, be more constructive to see it as a verb and as a long time, slowly often changing system or wheel that you give a push, rather than torturing ourselves with this question that is imposed on us often from other people who look for metrics, who are like, oh, in the same project, what's the result? In the same project, what's the impact? And I care about impact, but the impact is often not owned by us. We work on a project. If you're commissioned and you're not, you're doing your own project, you're commissioned and you are a contributor, but our clients own the process. And our clients often, if we do some foundational research on a big topic, we can offer learnings that will really help them. But we see often that helps them in so many ways that the report goes into many different projects, and it helps almost the mental model of thinking about the topic. It sparks some ideas for some things they want to try out and they want to prototype and test. So even if we would like to pinpoint what the result is, really difficult, because it immediately dissolves. And that means it's really difficult for us if we're invited to a conference, for instance, to speak about results or impact.
Or give examples, right?
And our clients are even putting big NDAs on us. that you can not talk about the details of the project, but we find in terms of meaningful process, meaningful change and purpose, that is a wider intent than a project. It's something like ethics. How do you, it's something that should always be in your work. And how are you in this project, at the next project, and the next project? How are you making sure that you're contributing to that? Take climate change. We can't fix climate change in a project, but what I can do is to try, if I see any opportunity, to see if I can make a contribution that will be folded into that, hopefully, spiral going up, and hopefully making things for the better. So having spoken with many people around us about why do we do this work, and we think, well, it's to contribute to meaningful change, we have found that we needed to shed that burden of having to justify impact.
Why you're doing it?
Results.
That makes sense. I really resonates with me. But one question that I have right now is, I mean, it sounds a bit more like a hidden agenda that you have when you're working with clients, because it's nothing that you can sell, right? So I mean, from your experience, you see the reports, they have an impact, and they get distributed, and they kind of get spread out within the company. But this is nothing that you would write in a proposal, right? Like how do you kind of make clear that you're having impact, or that you're changing something when you're talking to your clients that has like a very specific request, in the time frame as well?
Well, it's not secret in that sense. If you've done that work, it builds into your reputation, and people who work in a client organization go to another one and they tell others what you do. So in that sense, talking about a wider scope than a project is often more open than spoken about, this was this project, this was a topic, and this is what we did. So we find that the type of foundational research that we do, which is often in that very early stage, understanding a topic and understanding a context where these new services need to live in, that lives longer than that one project. Because it creates a deeper understanding, and that understanding exists longer in the organization often than just that project. So it becomes like an evergreen knowledge base.
Like a reference that the people always go back to.
Yes, in the next project you can probably still tap some information from that repository of insights. And that is something that many people do understand. So luckily, in the course of the years that we've been doing design research, we see more and more people in client organizations who perfectly understand that, and who know what the value is and what it is, and who are commissioning it.
And besides what you just said, that these reports then get like they just have feet suddenly, and they just go around. How could you also recognize that change is actually really happening? Like, is there something like an indicator maybe that you say, okay, this is working now. Now we kind of hit a nerve. We kind of moved something.
Mostly, I think we get these signals if we are working with a client organization over a longer time. Because if you're just coming out of the project, everybody is giddy with all what we did and very excited. And then you only evaluate the project, and then everybody needs to move on and work on the next thing. But if you then work with those same people a bit later, and they have a next iteration of the same project or a next topic, you often have the opportunity to ask, well, what happened after those ideation workshops we did? And that can be super gratifying to hear that people have been mining these reports or watching the videos, or it changed the jargon, the terminology that they started using internally. So it takes a bit of time for that to become clear. So if you have the luxury that you can check in with people after that time, and then hear them saying how they used it and how it spread indeed to others in the organization, that is always super nice, because we hope that that's true, but you only know that it's true if you literally. And sometimes even people pop up on our radar and we never met them. They worked in that organization, but they were one of the stakeholders. So we work with a core client team, you deliver, and there's many more stakeholders who use the results. But then they start working somewhere else and they call us and say, I want to work for us because I've always been working with your reports. And then I'm like, oh, that's nice to hear.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So you don't always know.
Yeah, but it's a good indicator actually. I had some questions around how do you measure it, how do you benchmark it, but I guess
measure.
In a way you answered it already. Yeah.
Well, they need to measure. So I'm not against metrics or impact or results monitoring, but that should be done by let's say the owner of the service or the owner of the topic area. So I'm all for that, and we even help sometimes our client organizations to develop that.
Yeah,
but that's something else than us measuring what the impact is that they created.
Yeah, sure. And now we're talking more about like your purpose, right? Like that you want to create a meaningful change in some way, and not It sometimes probably it goes along, but I guess not
help
always,
that process. We want to make a contribution to it.
Yeah.
And we do, I think, by helping those owners of those change processes, by helping them with setting ambitions, by scoping. So often a project starts quite open. And then in the exploratory research, you find what is the right scope here, what is meaningful, what's feasible, what's desirable, viable, all the words. But that's how you help making sure that if they progress in that direction, that it's more likely that it's successful, let's say. So that's a contribution you can make.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Oh, I see we have some questions from the audience coming in. Let me quickly check. So I guess this is a very hands-on one. What types of forms of reporting have you found most impactful?
Several. Also there, we often do a sort of a blended approach. You always have to create something, of course, that can live on in the organization, likely a slide deck. But we find that just delivering a slide deck can be a bit cold. So we try to always make a plea that it's not just a presentation or a readout of the results, but really we try to do workshops often where we work with not just the core team who commissioned us, but also this wider ring of stakeholders to work with, well, what can you do with these insights? So it could be an ideation workshop, or it could be a workshop to define follow-up projects or prioritizing. Often the research yields a longer list of opportunities than the team can pick up. We do a prioritization workshop to find out what's a short list of things they want to pick up. And that's quite important, we find. So we try to see the end of a project, not as a point, but as a period where there's a few activities you deliver to your core team, but then they need to deliver to a wider team. We help them with that, and you need to find the right formats for that. So sometimes we have a load of small film clips that we bring stories to inspire them. Sometimes we do some follow-up exercises with part of the report.
So you have to kind of make sure that you have ambassadors of your work in the organization then afterwards, I guess, like a bit, like enabling the people, telling them how to talk about it, spread it, use it, work with it, right?
Those are what we see as our counterparts in the organization. So often they are design researchers themselves, but they are so busy with managing it and having meetings that they commission. They're more like design research commissioners, but they do understand it quite well. And they then need to work with the results. So what we often deliver is also, we call it the pyramid of design of deliverables. So the tip of the iceberg, of course, is the management summary and the list of key findings, but there's a whole layered system beneath it for different stakeholders need to dive deeper in. So the senior management will just look at the tip of the iceberg, but somebody who then in a different department needs to work with it may read the whole report. But then a designer who really needs to make something, a new concept or a prototype, will probably want to dive even in the documented interactions we had with participants. So the report might have a quote which illustrates a finding, but that quote is just a small thing out of a longer conversation we had with people. So we make sure that we have links in the report that bring you to the documentation from that interaction. And we find that the closer people are to actually needing to work with the materials, they will dive deeper into that repository. And we spend quite a lot of attention to making sure that that is coherent, it lives on their system, and it's all interlinked, and they can find their way. So it's not just a report, it's a whole trail of evidence.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. Because you would expect that it's a slide deck in the end, but
there
it's
is
not.
always
it's even
a slide deck somewhere.
Yeah, there is always one, but there's so much more behind.
Or several, the short one, the longer one.
Yeah, true.
Yeah,
I remember also from our project.
Exactly. Not everybody can go through 200 slides.
That's true. So we have another question that goes more into behavioral change. What do you think really motivates this behavior change? And do you work like with any particular methods or toolbox to kind of find out about it?
It's a difficult one. It's not really our area of work. Of course, I know of that field of work. I follow it, but our work is more the research that's very exploratory, and that's foundational, almost sets the scene for a change process. Behavioral change, when it's really based on designing for behavioral change is more where the outcomes of the design
that's true.
Coming out, and that's a different field of researching that as well. That's more validating research. So I don't think I can say we worked on projects where we sort of were commissioned to create behavior change. On the other hand, of course, we have for years been doing a lot of projects around climate change. That is a lot about we need behavior change. But it's not that is the sole purpose of our work. We know that's part of the change process. And not only, because definitely in climate change, we need to be careful to not point the finger all the time at the consumers. You don't do this, you can't do that. It's also many other culprits in the system.
Yeah, sure.
But one of the elements is behavior change. All of us need to change our behavior and our lives. So that is part of the meaningful change. But I can't say that our work is specifically dedicated to behavior change. And I know that there are research designers who have specialized in that, but that's not our field. Yeah,
I feel it comes a bit later in like this whole design chain. This whole behavioral change. Maybe if you already have, it's just that the solution or the product is already there, and there's kind of something around this, some questions there, right?
Well, maybe just to add something, in a way we do touch on it, because we do in the exploratory research often look at what do people do now and why?
What are the motivations?
So we are looking for opportunities that there is likelihood of change. But that's in the understanding stage. We are not in the stage of now what shall we do to make sure that the change happens.
So
we are more looking where are likely opportunities that something can change, and people are interested and willing and potentially happy for that. So we're looking for opportunities more than realizing.
Yes, got it. So when we first met and we talked about a bit about this topic, we also had some conversations around ownership. And I mean, you were talking about this also like before, like what is the collaboration with the client and whatever. But let's dive a bit deeper into this whole ownership topic. You were talking about limited or distributed ownership. And what does this mean to you actually in the context of a project? I guess it's meant in the context of a project, right?
Yeah. I think before I mentioned it in the sense of NDAs, you don't own the project and you don't own the results, but there's another element to it, and I think that's where the distributed comes in, that if it's a complex topic, the change that you're working towards is not fixing the whole problem. It's really contributing to a system change. And that means it's distributed in its nature, because there's not one organization or one project that's going to fix it. So it's basically like climate change, again, to give that example. You have to also, on the one hand, be modest, that we can't fix it, but also to protect yourself a little bit, that it's impossible. But what you can do is see if you can at least make a contribution in the right direction. So you can't own system change. And I know it's sometimes suggested that it's possible. You know, you go to service design conference and we're all like, oh, we need to change the system. Yes, as an ambition, yes. But I'm doubting if there's any project that can claim we change the system. So that is all of us together working in that field. Hopefully, we are all giving pushes with our projects to change some systems in the right direction.
Yeah, being like one part of the puzzle, so to say, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that means it's per se distributed, and that means you can't claim it. It's difficult to say, oh, come and present how you change the system. And also that would be too large a burden, I think, to take on your shoulders.
Sure.
But you can try your best with every project. And then if you look back, if you've done a period of work, you can see that things have changed, and you can be proud that you've been part of that. You've been part of that. It's almost like a movement. Activist. Then if you have done good projects, you have contributed to that. And you have to credit everybody else, of course, but you have played a part in that. And that's definitely with these big question marks, like the healthcare system, the climate, better work environments, all things you can't fix in a project, but it's super important that we work on this and we contribute to it.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I think in the context of a project, because it's just like a little puzzle piece, it feels a bit meaningless, or that you have probably sometimes also a bit frustrating because you're aiming at such a bigger thing and you don't getting there, probably because of the scope of the project, there is no budget, I don't know, whatever. So yeah, but in talking about that, like, what are other challenges, or what are challenges that you would see there having with this, like, or how could affect the limited ownership your work as a design researcher?
Yeah, well, what I'm munching on at the moment is this, maybe us, we need to change our frame, not looking for results and impact, but change to more the dynamic of contributing to meaningful change. That should we not embrace, rather than looking for a project has an ending and an ending is a result. A project is a step in a larger thing that has a direction and that has a purpose. And I think that will help us in our conversations if we embrace that more. And also, in that sense, celebrate more of every one of you who's presenting a project and who has done a good contribution in that direction, without saying, yeah, but then what's the exact result? Or what's your impact? Because that is also making a lot of people very insecure or shy, even if they're doing good work. And definitely people who are just coming into the field, that can be very intimidating.
Sure, yeah. I mean, and here the question again is, how do you kind of communicate this or make it clear towards the client again, right? Because for them, it's the project and it has an end and it has to have results. And so I think there is some tension sometimes, I would expect, right? How do you deal with that from your experience?
Not really. Of course, there's practicalities. We're an agency, so they commission us for a certain period of time or for a certain budget, but they don't see it as it ends, because the organization goes on with the results. So the project for them is a blip on a timeline, but the timeline is what matters to them. So our conversation with them is not about the project, but it's about the timeline and where do they want to go and why.
Yeah, and then in the end you have findings, right? You have like something kind of tangible also for them that they can see as result if they want to have results.
That helps them go forward.
They have them,
step.
right? Yeah. There is a question from the audience that fits here. I think it's also very, very hands-on. Like, I mean, parts of demonstrating the impact or the change again comes with documentation and what we just mentioned, to have like the key findings and results of it. Any tips in terms of tools, methods, routines, or practices for tracing this? Like, what is your go-to?
Tracing your documentation.
Yes, yeah.
Well, the biggest one is be transparent. Don't be a black box. Don't be like, ta-da, this is the big rabbit out of the hat. Look at my amazing insights. You need to, and that's the quality of the validity in qualitative research. You need to be able to substantiate by giving your clients or whoever stakeholders come to work with it the opportunity to trace back where this is coming from. So you need to be able to explain the process. Why do you do it in this way, and how did you get to this insight? And in that sense, I think it's comparable with how a designer works, right? A designer in the end has made a beautiful design, but usually also shows the way. Otherwise, your client will be like, "Yeah, okay, that's nice. Where's it coming from?" So you show your path to it, and you show that there were maybe some different paths, and you've carefully considered that. That's a research process as well. You probe, and you get some threads, and you consider them, and you weigh them, and you discuss it with others. So transparency is super important.
Yeah, and I guess also like a very thorough documentation, right? Yeah, you kind of document everything, I guess.
Yeah, it's not raw data. There's no point in just throwing your raw data on the plate of your client. So you'll have to organize that so people can trace it back from the key insights to the data snippets it's based on and to the structured documentation. So that's a lot of legwork, but it makes your final results much more solid.
Even richer. Yeah.
And it means you need to be open to that. It makes you a bit vulnerable as well. But if you've done it well and people really engage with it, you're much more proud of it than when you have this pink rabbit and they're like, okay, we have pink rabbit.
Yeah, well, I guess that comes probably also with experience, right? Like, I mean, you've seen so many projects, so you have like the, how you say, like the certainty. You actually really know that this is going to work. We've seen it. Yeah, you've seen it so many times and everything. And I guess if you're a design research right at the beginning, I mean, you deal with a lot of challenges, right? You have clients questioning the method because you're just talking to 3 people, and then sometimes people say you are too biased because, I mean, it's just like human conversation, you know, and then all this kind of thing. So I guess that's something that has to grow, right? Or
definitely, I see that when new people join the team, they need to learn to be comfortable with that, because it makes you vulnerable indeed. And you always think you don't know everything. So you always feel a little bit insecure. But together, when you go through that, you establish that you're in a better position if you accept that vulnerability and you open up your way of working. The end result is better. But it takes a bit of time to become comfortable with that.
Comfortable with it, yeah. Any tips on how to get there quicker?
Work with others.
Yeah.
Because working in a team is already a big part of that process. You're constantly checking with each other, and you can show your uncertainties as well to each other. Like, am I right with this interpretation? Or
it's like
sense the way checking, how I've structured the documentation. Yeah, indeed, it's sense checking. It's difficult on your own to do that.
Yeah, that's true. That's really hard. Yeah. I'm looking at the time. I mean, I could go on for ages here. But you also you published a book on this topic, right? We also wanted to mention this for the people who are probably more interested in it. Yes, please, if you have it there.
It's called, it's a bit dark maybe, but the title is Catalyst, Thoughts on Design Research for Meaningful Change. And it's actually made with a lot of people from around the world, because we have design research partners in many different countries around the world, about 20. And this book started with us between ourselves having conversations about, well, why do we do what we do?
Yeah.
What is the purpose and how can we express the purpose of it? And then we found this whole thing to feel more comfortable with meaningful change rather than with impact and results. So it has a few essays, which are all written, and that's interesting, I find, all written by a combination of, so there might be an essay of a partner from Spain and Australia who both work in care and are really dedicated to working on improving the healthcare system. Then there is an article which we contributed to about sustainability, climate change, and that is with Indian partner and the Mexican partner and the Brazilian partner. So it's all essays with people working in different contexts, but pooling their knowledge to reflect on meaningful change.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting. There's different perspectives and
really nice. Yes.
Yeah. Do they find common ground?
Yes. Yeah. Because you do, although you're distributed across the world, as design researchers, you share a lot about those, the principles of your work and the methodology of your work. So it's always a big celebration to exchange and to see so many similarities. And then being researchers, we're also, of course, very interested in the extra added value of the differences. So that's a joy to pull that together and to see that maybe on 2/3 or 3/4, it really fits together. And then there's few nuances which you can learn from.
Yeah, sounds really good. I think we shared in the chat the link where you can get the book.
Oh, nice.
For all of those who are interested and curious now. Thank you so far. This was really nice and enjoyable to chat with you.
It's a lovely conversation.
Yeah, I mean, we have still, I think, a few questions from the crowd. I have one here, which is a very hands-on one again. How do you charge or set prices for your work?
That's not so difficult. We're an agency, so we charge per day. That's how agencies work. And of course, your day rate can be a bit different, whether it's a large international corporate or a non-profit. So that you have to find out with the client. But then basically it is how much work does this project need? And often they ask us to suggest what would be the methodology and how intense is it. So that needs some conversations, but it's not rocket science.
Yeah, I mean, I think, or like, this is also a question. I guess the most challenging thing is to kind of calculate how much time you will need, right?
Yeah, but over time.
Yeah, it's again the experience, right? The time.
Yeah, and of course we make mistakes. In some projects, there might be an element that you're like, oh, I didn't see that coming. And then sometimes together with the client team, you decide to redistribute maybe some time because you need to stay in the budget.
Sure.
Or sometimes to cut something out, or sometimes they can extend it. They say, sorry, we didn't realize, but we also want you to do more of these workshops. And then we're like, that's more time. Or as standby, we decide to do it anyway. It depends on the project and the client and the topic. But sometimes we think, okay, we could do it concise and quick and as agreed, but we see a purpose in the project. It might be that we want to do some R&D on methods and we decide to put some more time in, or it might be because the topic is very important and we see that in our team, people love to work on it and we're like, okay, put a bit more time in.
Yeah, okay. And here's another question around pitching to new clients, actually. Like if you don't have this experience and this reputation that was built over years, do you have any tips or any best practices in terms of how to kind of pitch it, how to document your work so that you are able to pitch it to new clients?
As in pitching that you are
As in
already
selling
in
a project.
conversation with them?
Yes, yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. I would
because
say so.
we don't do much cold sales.
Yes, okay.
That we don't need to advertise it, and that's too difficult with that very specialized work that we have. So usually a conversation starts quite openly. Somebody has heard of us, or somebody wants, or a team wants something to get done, and another gives a tip and says, maybe you should speak with standby. But often it doesn't start with a brief yet. It starts with a conversation like, what is it that you do?
Yeah, and
can you
how can you help us?
Yeah, can you listen to what we are grappling with, and could you help? And if that progresses from both sides, we're like, yeah, we could do something for you. Then it also progresses in, well, is this a big or a small project? What is the timeline? Do you need results very soon, or is there time to do more prolonged field work? So the pitching doesn't happen as a moment, in my experience. It's a progressing conversation where it's almost, they're sort of scouting out, who are you guys? What can you do for us? And if the right things come together, it becomes a request for a proposal.
Yeah.
Very seldom we get a briefing boom in the inbox like, oh, can you send a proposal? But that's not often. More a conversation that starts. So pitching, I wouldn't call it pitching, but it is, of course, you have to have the right story, of course, to answer to that question, and to give enough suggestions that they feel, oh, there's something there that could really help us. So yes, you have to sell it. But yeah, it's not a one-shot moment.
Yeah. And as you said, it's conversations, and it's about, probably giving your potential client the feeling that you're listening, that you're understanding, that you have ideas on where to go, right?
Yeah. And that means we're usually maintaining conversations with many organizations and people. And sometimes that develops quickly in a project. Sometimes it can take a year before something really happens. It really depends also about the timelines. Some organizations, we are often commissioned in design teams who work in sort of innovation area of the organization. And some of these organizations are like machines, and they do a lot of that. But some only have the opportunity every year to start up a new project. So it needs to be the right moment for them as well.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, cool. So are there any more questions? Is someone brave enough to open up their mic and and ask a question? No. I have one more left. If there is nothing, no one.
I see somebody I know, Laura Zambelli. Hey, Laura. Haven't seen you for years. Sorry, had to say that.
No worries. That's nice to hear. Yes. Nice occasion to meet again. I have one last question. Is it possible to buy a digital version of your book somewhere?
Oh, not yet.
Not yet, but because there will be.
We love the physicality of it. So we've printed, I don't know, 1,000 copies. So only when it's out of print. So with previous project publication, we've done that. We've now, this is our fourth. But we're not distributing the digital copy if we still have some boxes of these. But so it means very expensive.
Yeah. So it means we have to buy the physical one.
Or you have to wait until everybody else has bought it. Yes. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, it's quite an investment to make a book. And we don't print a huge amount of it. So at some point it's done, and then we'll release it as a digital ebook.
So you don't reprint it again unless it's a huge success, worldwide success.
Yeah. No, we don't. But it's also just nice. I don't know.
Yeah, that's
lovers?
True.
It's just nice to hold a book and to have beautiful pictures in there. Well, yeah.
Yeah, totally. I get that. Cool. So thank you so much.
Pleasure.
I think we reached the end of this very nice chat. was very cool to hear your insights, and from your vast experience, it's really nice. Thank you.
Well, have a lovely evening, and
yeah,
go for it. All contribute to meaningful change.
Yes, let's do it. But before you all leave,
can I say one more thing?
Yes,
because there's so
please.
many international people.
Yeah.
Not just Standby, but maybe just to mention our network, the REACH network, which is all these agencies in different countries. Just look up the website of reach-network.com. There might be one of them in your area. Hook up if you're a design researcher. That's nice.
Yeah, that's a very nice tip. Yes. And building on that, before we all leave,